What really blew my mind after 3.5 years volunteering in Ukraine, doing all sorts of projects, is I realized that urbanism is so much more. Just amplified the importance of it when you're in a war zone where an entire population is at risk of suffering from mental trauma, PTSD, let alone brutal missile and drone attacks constantly on Kyiv and most other Ukrainian cities. When you can do things that give a little bit of a medicine to people to take their mind off of it, that is the power of urbanism. It's a powerful tool, even more than I've ever realized.
As you know, I have a very clear mission with Building Green. And I know so many brilliant architects, interior designers, and contractors who do too. But they're still stuck working on projects that drain them, with clients who don't value what they bring. That's why we founded Market Your Architecture over a year ago. It's a marketing agency that helps mission-driven designers attract better clients, charge what they are worth, and finally build the kind of portfolio that reflects who they really are. If that sounds like the shift you need, there's a link in the description to marketyourarchitecture.com. And before we jump into the podcast, please rate and subscribe. It really helps me reach more people like you. In a world increasingly facing the challenges of climate change, with the Building Green podcast, we will dive deep into the intersection of architecture, design, urbanism, and environmental responsibility. I'm Ladina Schipp, your host. I've been an architect and building site manager for the past 10 years. During my studies at ETH in Switzerland, as well as in my working environment, I've had many touchpoints with sustainability, like many of you, I guess. I've also learned to question what I've been told, which is why I decided to go deeper into the topic and uncover what sustainability actually means. My mission is to highlight the transformative power of sustainable architecture, not just as a practice, but as a catalyst for broader societal change. Subscribe for more of our content and enjoy the show. My guest today planted trees and built an entire park in the middle of a missile zone, and hundreds of people showed up to help him. Mikael Colville-Andersen is a Canadian-Danish urban designer who spent the last 3 years doing something almost unthinkable. He built community spaces in the middle of a war zone. In Kyiv, Ukraine, he turned an empty concrete square into what became the world's largest tactical urbanism project. And he watched as hundreds of citizens stepped into a space they actually didn't know they needed. And ever since, he calls planting trees medicine for urbanism, not just for the city, but for the soul. And when you hear him talk about bottom-up projects, you realize he's not just there to beautify cities, he's there to humanize them. This is the story of how bikes, benches, and a colorful crosswalk can reclaim dignity, joy, and the city's soul even during war. Mikael, thank you so much for joining me. You are a Canadian-Danish urban designer and urban mobility expert who spent the last 3 years working on design, architecture, and tactical urbanism in the middle of a war in the Ukraine. Before we talk about what that looked like, can you share your journey and how you got there?
It was in April 2022. I remember incredibly clearly. I was completely devastated by this full invasion, losing sleep. Like, you grow up during the Cold War and they told you what might happen, and then it happens on your doorstep to Europe here. So, I was really messed up about it. And then I got an email in April 22 from 2 urban planning colleagues. I didn't know them, but they were in Lviv in the west of the country. And it was a personal and professional appeal for help. Their mobility was paralyzed in Lviv. They have 700,000 people, and they received 200,000 people overnight, internally displaced people, millions of people hammering through the train station to get to safety in Europe. They were completely under pressure. So gridlock on the streets because of all the new cars, public transport overcapacity, and they realized, wait, we need a solution, and bikes as transport, like we do in Europe. They said to each other, what do they do in Europe? Oh my God, they ride bikes for transport. And then they said, we got to contact that guy in Copenhagen who literally wrote the book on this topic and ask for help. And they're like, oh my God, he's never going to answer, he's not even going to read the email. Oh, I read the email. Oh my God. I can remember, man, the moment I get this email, just like this, appeal from colleagues in a war zone, something that was kind of in my wheelhouse, but I just answered in under 10 minutes, and he Zoomed with them the next day. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to get, at that point, used bikes. That's what they wanted, used bicycles imported from Europe to help with the mobility solution. And I said, I'll figure it out, which I did. I ended up doing that. But it was really this one email that was the catalyst for my Ukrainian journey.
So you started working with them by donating used bikes, and then you moved over there to work as an urban designer.
Yeah, like that was the initial appeal, right? We need bikes, like lots of them for mobility in Lviv. And so in Denmark, one of the great cycling nations, we throw away 30,000 bikes a year in Copenhagen alone. And I just realized that, I can get bikes. People on that first shipment that I sent in July 22, a big truck leaving Copenhagen, it was filled with donated bikes from citizens, bikes from the police, like abandoned bikes that they found on the streets, and some other organizations that pitched in as well. So that was an immediate solution to their mobility crisis in Lviv. We gave those bikes to internally displaced people in camps in Lviv, adult bikes for mobility, kids' bikes for activity, just giving these kids something to do to take their mind off of everything they had experienced. And then I kept going in and out quite often after that with another shipment from Berlin, a shipment donated from Belgium and all that. And then the more time I spent there, I realized all the challenges that the Ukrainian people are facing. And I started focusing on mental health. It's off the charts, the mental health issues because of this invasion, mental trauma, PTSD. And they're not really equipped for it in Ukraine as we maybe are in Northern Europe, where we've been focusing on it for decades. So that's where I started staying and realizing that there's a lot of other projects I can do.
It's so interesting. And you talk a lot about urban design publicly. You've had TEDx speeches in Zurich, by the way. You have your own successful TV show called The Life-Size City. Tell me, what is your mission? Why do you care so much about bikes, cities, and people?
I think, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm a city boy, first of all. I grew up in a city. I love going hiking and canoeing and the second best thing about hiking and canoeing is I get to come home to a city, and at the end of that, there's always a city waiting for me. I've always been a city boy. It's the greatest human experiment in history, how we all started to live together in cities 6,000-7,000 years ago. We're more urban than ever before. I just realized that this is a fascinating, thing to observe, right? How we live together in our cities, the problems that we have, looking for solutions, how to solve them, especially as we, are hammering towards a climate crisis, climate collapse. What are we going to do in our cities? We can't just keep on keeping on. We have to think radically different about it. So I've always just thrown my brain into trying to figure out solutions for all these different things. But it is really, for me, the most human thing to live in a city, constantly observing your fellow citizens, irritated with some of them, but fascinated by others, but just observing the urban theater. I've done that ever, my entire life, just sitting at cafes, just watching the streets, how people react to their urban environment. I just love it. Anthropology, sociology, urbanism, all mixed into one. I just think it's really fascinating. I've never been able to unsee it, So, I've been known as this bike guy, writing books about it and working with cities around the world to design their bicycle infrastructure. But I mean, I'm not a cyclist. I'm just a guy in Copenhagen who rides a bike to get around. I don't have any spandex or all the goofy equipment like fingerless gloves and helmets and all that stuff. I just think bicycles are the most human form of transport in a city. But generally, I think I get called by some of my friends the impatient idealist. I want everything to change now. I know how to do it. I have ideas, and it never can go fast enough. Cities are very conservative in the way that they work. So, I'm just always frustrated that we're not moving fast enough, especially with the challenges that we're facing going forward now with the climate crisis and stuff. So I don't know. It's just a general fascination, and I got ideas to fix stuff, and I've been fixing stuff and talking about it, theorizing, just keeping the conversation going in a way that, that's what I'm told, a little bit more irreverent than most. I call bullshit on everything, so, I'm not this, academic who speaks in this very academic language about things. No, man, the stuff's broken. We got to fix it. Let's go,
What's the biggest bullshit you've seen in a European city?
About 80 years of car-centric infrastructure planning. we've lived in cities together for like 7,000 years, right? The last 100 years, we messed up so bad because we invented the automobile. That's one thing, right? Might have a purpose in some aspects of our lives, but then we just started pumping them into our cities. Like back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, well, into the 70s even, and 80s in Europe, we just believed that this was the only solution we're ever going to need. We were completely blinded by and fascinated by and obsessed with the automobile. And so that scale of destruction is really hard to reverse. Once you completely transform a city to be a car-centric city, oh my God, it's hard to go backwards, with the public backing as well as the hard changes you need to make in a city. So that's the worst thing we've ever done, probably in human history, is letting cars into our cities and putting all of our money on the car as the only mobility solution. We're better now. You see a lot of cities, especially in Europe, and China is doing great at the moment, where they realize, okay, we got to go back to the future, back to when things worked before we invented the automobile. How can we do that? It's not about how many cars you can move down the street. It's how many people you can move down the street. And that is trams, that is bicycle infrastructure, that's, the bigger picture. So but that's where we messed up so bad, and we're still trying to fix it. And some places are not even bothering. In the United States, classic, they don't have any other mobility solutions. They're still experiencing insane levels of car dependency. If you want to stop driving, there's no bike lanes to ride on. There's no public transport, in their low density suburbs and things like that. So challenges are massive for everybody, just worse in some places and maybe a bit easier in others.
What do you think about some big cities like Sao Paulo and Mexico City? They use every Sunday or every second Sunday, they close like their biggest roads in the city just to open them up for bicycles, for joggers and stuff like that. Do you think that helps? Or do you think that's kind of a Band-Aid?
Car-free Sundays it's a nice idea. It started in Latin America, spread around the world, captures people's imagination, but it's symbolic. Why isn't there a car-free Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Which some cities are working towards, like Paris, for example, completely, not eliminating the automobile. You'll never do that, but really restricting the automobile because it's just bad for our public health. It's a city destroyer. We've known that for almost a century, right? So I think that's a great idea. But I mean, does it help? No. It's like you have a park. Let's all go to the park and hang out there. That's great. It's car-free Sunday. Let's go out and ride our bike or rollerblade or whatever. Yeah, it becomes an event in the city. It has an effect in that it shows people what it's like to have car-free streets, which is great. But they've been going on for 20 years in many of these cities. Mexico City is doing a lot of good things towards building bicycle infrastructure, looking for other mobility solutions. Sao Paulo is still a black hole completely. But, so it's a good thing. Don't take it away. But where is the effect of it? Where are the car-free streets? The streets that now have bus rapid transit exclusively with bike lanes and wider sidewalks. That's what we need, is to see the payoff of putting so much time and effort into these car-free Sunday events, right? So it's a drop in the ocean, really, if you think about it. Back when they started, I'm big fan. Now I'm looking at it, 20 years later going, okay, nothing's happened, right? So not what's the point? Stop doing it, but what's the point of it if there's been no progress towards more life-size cities, more people-friendly cities? That's where you got to stop at some point going, okay, it's great every Sunday, but where do we go from here?
So I want to talk about your mission in the Ukraine. On a big picture, you have compared planting trees in Kyiv to taking medicine in a war zone, as if urbanism was like a medicine in a war zone. What do you mean by that? And how did you come to believe that?
I've always known in my career, I think anybody who works in urbanism, all the different professions underneath that umbrella word, we know that urbanism is a powerful tool for making cities better, for improving urban lives. It's literally our job to know that basic fact, and it's true. Always has been, whether it's Roman cities or modern cities, right? Designing well for the humans in a city is a powerful tool. What really blew my mind after 3.5 years volunteering in Ukraine, doing all sorts of projects, is I realized that urbanism is so much more. It's just amplified the importance of it when you're in a war zone where an entire population at risk of suffering from mental trauma, PTSD, let alone the brutal missile and drone attacks constantly on Kyiv and most other Ukrainian cities. So in the 3.5 years I've been working there on these urbanism and landscape architecture projects, it's all volunteer based. I've had 1,500 people help me on all my projects, volunteering to build a public space, to design a trauma-informed therapy garden, a community garden. So I just see how so many of these people return time and time again. And talking to them, it is really a form of therapy, to come and help, to work in a forest and design a therapy garden or a community garden, or to build a bench in public space. There is a reward for us who do that. I suffer from anxiety disorder. So the joke is always, I'm designing all this stuff in Ukraine for me while I build it, and then I'll hand it over to the Ukrainian people afterwards. But I just see how the people volunteering on these projects, but also the people who use them afterwards, the general public, I just see how if these things we do takes people's minds off of all the shit that we have to deal with in Ukraine every single day, with missile and drone attacks and attacks on the energy infrastructure. You got no power today, things like that. If that takes our minds off of all of that for 30 minutes, for 2 hours, then that is a medicine. Just allows you to relax, just to take a load off underneath a tree, on a bench, on a public space, a pop-up urbanism project, even just a temporary one like that. Oh, well, then it's a medicine. It has medicinal qualities, and it's a powerful medicine as well. So this is what I just, thinking I know all this stuff about urbanism. You go to a war zone, you go, oh my God, I don't know enough, and that's what, it's a fantastic opportunity to be able to study how cities in Ukraine are dealing with a brutal illegal invasion and a country that's trying to kill all of you, including me, because I live there, right? All the time. How do you deal with that? You just keep on keeping on. The resilience of the Ukrainian people. We've been talking about that for 3.5 years. And when you live there with them, you're going, oh yeah, I get it now. It's in every person you talk to, everybody who walks past you on the street or sits next to you on the metro. You just really sense that resilience. After so long, oh my God, people are tired. I mean, it's just, exhausting to wake up and be resilient every single day, but you do it, right? We're humans. We're designed to just live our lives and do as best as we can. So when you can do things that give a little bit of a medicine to people, to take their mind off of it, that is the power of urbanism. It's a powerful tool, even more than I've ever realized. I also can wax poetic about it, where I just thought of one day, I thought, you know what urbanism is? It's an orchestra, it's this collective music. And if you play it just right, you can drown out the incessant percussion of the Russian war machine. That also is the power of urbanism, these simple interventions, temporary pop-up spaces, a simple garden. These things help, like, dramatically. They help in Wichita, Kansas, where some activists will flip a parking lot and make a temporary public space with a food truck. That's amazing. But when you're in a war zone, you're going, yeah, this is so much more. It really is just this beautiful force for good, urbanism.
Are you saying that urbanism works as medicine because it's a tool of community building?
I think community building is part of it. I think when you design a public space, tactical urbanism, temporary solutions for a shorter period of time, there was nothing there before. And I'm in Kyiv, which doesn't have a lot of urban parks. They have big parks, all around, but they don't have things in my neighborhood. They don't have a lot of trees in the neighborhoods in many districts of the city. So if you all of a sudden create something in a war zone where there was nothing, people walk past and go, yo, look at that. Oh my God, somebody made a bench and a tree. The grandma can sit down there. I can sit there with my kids and have an ice cream, or I can read a book or talk with a friend. So when you've resigned yourself to, like, this war is dragging on and tonight I'm going to lose sleep because Russians are going to try and kill me again. All of a sudden there's a little oasis in the middle of your everyday life. And that's what I've seen with the temporary urbanism projects that we've done, is that people just embrace it because it popped up in the middle of a war. If you do it, in peacetime, like, I don't know why I just picked Wichita, Kansas, but like in a small American city or a suburb of Vienna or something, it's great. People go, oh my God, that wasn't here. Look at, somebody did something. Somebody made things better. It's the same effect everywhere. brings the community together, but just like I said, it amplifies itself in a war zone where we need it so much more because the mental health issues are off the charts. It's shocking numbers when you look at how many people in Ukraine are at risk of mental trauma and PTSD. Like 1.5 million children alone are at risk of it. Like I said, it amplifies in a war zone, but it is still a community, and all the volunteer work, all these 1,500 volunteers on all my projects. Yeah. They don't know each other. They all just rock up together. And I'm saying, right, everybody, let's make some benches. Here's the design. Go plant those trees over there. Bum, bum, bum. It brings these people together and they have a shared experience. And again, making things better, so many volunteer events in Ukraine in the time I've been there, more intense at the beginning. We're out in a public space. We're packing rations for the soldiers. We're sewing camouflage nets in this beautiful collective experience. Somebody's playing music to get us, into the vibe and things like that. Volunteering and any of these kind of projects bring people together, whether it's in a North American city or somewhere or in a war zone. That's the essence of urbanism. We're in the urban experiment together, and the people that you're in there with are your fellow citizens, your neighbors, right? And anytime we can interact more with them and develop interpersonal relationships, then it's a good thing.
It's beautiful. You mentioned Kyiv Square. Can you walk me through how you turned Kyiv's Kontratova Square, a concrete square, an empty concrete square, into the world's largest tactical urbanism project in a war zone?
The short answer to that is I have absolutely no idea. I don't know how we pulled this off. It is the largest, most complicated project of my entire life, not even my career. But it's beautiful and rewarding at the end of the day. But I had been doing some great projects. And then the Danish pharmaceutical company Novo Nordisk, they have their corporate social responsibility. They came to me in Kyiv, and they had seen some of the work I've been doing. Danish company, I'm a Danish guy. And, we all said, let's see what we can do together. And they said the greatest thing. They said, we have lots of money. Do you have any ideas? You just never hear that question.
What a dream client.
I know, God, just say it again. Say it again. It's so sexy. Oh my God. And then I was also saying, do I have any ideas? Oh my God. Sit down and get a pen because here we go. I threw like 10, 15 ideas across the table and we quickly settled on one idea. It was kind of the one I wanted to do the most. It was the most really impossible at that stage, thinking about the scale of this project and the permissions we would need. But we settled on transforming Kontratova Square into a temporary urbanism project. And this is the most iconic historic square in the history of Ukraine. The city of Kyiv was born on that square. In the 6th century, there was a market, streets, buildings, traders on the river, people coming on the overland routes. That's why Kyiv is where it is, because it was this intersection for an entire region. So they had paved it over and left it for dead, 20, 30 years ago, late Soviet era. And then cars were driving through. There was parking. This 11,000 square meters of asphalt that was just neglected. Nothing happening there. Just people walking through like zombies, right? Because there was nothing to do. And I just thought, man, if anything needs to happen, it is here on this beautiful, iconic square in the heart of their most historical neighborhood. The poetry of the most historic square, the importance of this square for the local neighborhood, who are very independent. It's called Podil. And they had ownership over this square for 1,500 years, and then it was taken away because there's nothing there. So it was also the project on the table that had the most immediate impact on the mental and physical health of Ukrainians, which is why we were all there. So there was some funding, a modest amount of funding for a project of this scale, but I said, let's do it. And it was so hard. In a normal world, I would have 10 people employed full time for 6 months on a project of that scale, but we were 3 people. It was me, a project coordinator, and a first-time architect, and we had volunteers helping us, but this was just so hard. 8 months of planning, citizen engagement workshops, and then we're just prototyping everything ourselves in the backyard of our office. It was so great. That was really cool. Covered in sawdust for months and months on end with holding power tools, trying to make stuff that doesn't break, like taking the idea of a temporary bench that I wanted to design, which is only in my head and some really bad doodles, and then trying to build it out of wood, right? So that was a beautiful process. You never get to do that. Usually everything yourself, every screw, every piece of wood cut, and as well as all of the overall arching design issues that you had to deal with. So we finally started installing it in late spring this year. 2 months of installing it, and I still today look back and I don't have any idea how we pulled it off. There were so many moving parts to this, off the charts design challenges. Oh my God! But we did it, and it is just a massive success. The way people of the neighborhood and the city have embraced this space. It's just beautiful. It's overwhelming to have people come up to me all the time on the square, which they do, like all sorts of people, 20-year-old hipsters, older women, families just saying, yo, Danish guy, thank you so much for this. So, and then the thing is, it's the world's largest tactical urbanism project. But I looked at New York, Times Square. They did something similar back in 2008. They closed it off to traffic, threw out some tables and chairs, experimented with it. Oh, big success. They made it permanent. I Googled it. They have 10,000 square meters and I have 11. So we are probably the world's largest. But that's a cool narrative. But it also is really a cool narrative for Ukrainians, because they're going, the difference with what we did was that we did it in a war zone exclusively with volunteers, and completely exhausted after yet another sleepless night because of yet another brutal missile and drone attack on the city. We're exhausted in the mornings, talking to each other, go, wow, that was rough. Yeah, pretty intense. Wow. Okay. Let's get to work. What else are you going to do? For us, that was the only reasonable response to terrorism, was getting back to work and just trying to make things better for the mental and physical health of the people, right? So drove us forward every day, working with air raid sirens echoing off the surrounding buildings. Just get back to work, make things better. So world's largest, technically, I guess, but world's most important project, I think so, absolutely. And if we can do this in a war zone, I'm hoping that other cities around the world are going, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. Why don't we just do it on a Tuesday? Like, why if they can do it in a war zone with volunteers and hardly any budget, then we got to get this done, right? So that's what I'm hoping is the knock-on effect, is like, we did it there. Why are you not doing it now, right?
Just a quick reality check. If you're constantly over-delivering, working around the clock, and still chasing the right kind of projects, you're not alone. I keep meeting architects, interior designers, and contractors in that exact cycle, which is actually why we started Market Your Architecture. We help you reposition your work and get in front of more of the right people, so you can finally choose who you want to work with. If that sounds interesting to you and you want to know more about us, you'll find the link to marketyourarchitecture.com in the description. I'm going to show us a few pictures of the square, but for those who are not watching and just listening, can you mention a few of the elements that you placed on the square?
Yeah, the scale of the square, 11,000 square meters, is massive. Like size-wise, also the largest project I've ever had to do. I mean, I've designed cities for bikes. That's a large area to work with, but this is one big square. So the design challenges were, it started really with how do we not fill it up? We're not going to have something in every square meter of the square. There has to be space for other people to come and have events. It's public space. But you can't under-design so that whatever you design disappears in the vastness of this asphalt wasteland, right? So we had to create a balance between those two things. And, down the middle of the square is kind of an oblong, rectangular square. So I designed a boulevard where we have a beautiful artwork that Ukrainian graphic designer won. We had a competition on Instagram. People voted for her design. Bright color on the dull asphalt. It's the tactical urbanism playbook, right? You start with color, painting that asphalt. And then there's kind of a boulevard down the middle to squeeze in the space and give it a bit of context. And then we worked with zones. So at one end of the square, there's this scaffolding structure that I designed with seating and tables and swings and shade and greenery. Really cool to work with scaffolding as a flexible solution. Another huge wooden structure in the middle of the square, also as a little green urban hub for people to sit in. Kind of our showpiece structure. Lots of activities as well, ping pong. Oh, and in our citizen engagement, we were talking to the locals. It's also a new concept for many Ukrainian citizen engagement. Like, you're going to ask me my opinion and actually listen to it? I'm going, oh yeah, you got to have ownership. This is your neighborhood. Wow. Okay. Let's do this. Great working with school kids and, 80-year-old grandmas and everything. And they were so engaged in this project, really. I've done this all over the world, but the level of engagement was high, probably because they never really have to do this. Nobody's ever asked their opinion, really.
You have a lot of experience working in cities, but did the outcomes surprise you of the citizen engagement?
Yeah, I've worked all over the world in cultures where maybe citizen engagement is not as normal a thing as it is here in Scandinavia. But the level of engagement, once you get them in the room and then they trust you, they have to, like at the beginning, they're skeptical, all of these different groups, but then you realize, there's a weird Danish guy talking here. Okay. And I'm explaining what it's all about and stuff, then they get involved. And we had plans for like physical activities. Novo Nordisk, their corporate social responsibility is physical health. And my project was about mental health and urbanism. So I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have street basketball. We're going to have street football, there's a lot of space to work with. And the people of the neighborhood were going, no, we don't want that. We want benches. We want shade. We want greenery. Ping pong, that sounds nice. Pétanque, the French game. Yeah, that sounds cool. So we just realized that was one of the things that influenced us, was that they didn't want any high impact sports. They said there's other places to do that stuff. They wanted the public space, which I did too, but we scaled it back. So ping pong tables, we built a small skate ramp for small kids to start learning their skateboarding. We have pétanque, an outdoor chess set. That's the most popular thing on the square. That was very Eastern European, how they all wanted to have chess, any kind of chess anywhere. And we have this huge, these pieces of wood that are chess pieces. This is my personal baby. I used all the offcuts, all the leftover wood from the rest of the project, and made insanely heavy chess pieces. So there's a sticker on them that says that if you play an average game of chess here, you're going to end up lifting 350 kilograms in the course of this game. So mental and physical strength combined, right? So it's all spread out around the square. There's an area where there's a stage and some bleachers, some tribune seating where people can do their own event. 30-meter long interactive pixel artwork donated by a Danish artist friend called Thomas Dambo, where you flip all the little pixels on it. You can write whatever you want. You can make drawings. It's incredibly popular as well. So working with the scale was insanely difficult, but then I think we've done a good job with creating this kind of a zone area. Most of the local neighborhood hang out at the one end where there's lots of stuff for kids to do. The rest of it is sort of more transitory space where people can stop on a bench and have a coffee or whatever. So also history, we have a whole history cube telling the story of Kontraktova. That was what the citizens in the engagement sessions wanted too. They said, please tell the story of this square. They're all about their storytelling in Ukraine. Obviously, if your whole national identity is under threat of being erased from the face of the planet, right? So they all tell the story. And it's an amazing story, the research, like literally, one of the most iconic squares in the history of Europe, So I was happy to do that. So yeah, it was just really interesting to see how things were the same as anywhere else in the world. Benches, trees, greenery. Oh my God, absolutely important. But also we want chess and we want history. That was a really unique thing from the Ukrainians. So yeah, of course we accommodated all of that as much as we could. But yeah, the great thing is that it's the same everywhere. The baseline. People just want a nice place to hang out. They want some shade and a tree. And in our structures that we built, like we tackled the heat island effect as well. If it's 35 degrees out on the asphalt, it's easily 15 degrees cooler inside of our small hubs, So that really, it's been so popular all summer. It's just alive. Like constantly, right up until curfew at midnight, because it's martial law, right? So it's overwhelming to see how the people just embraced it, and it's just temporary benches that we made, that we whipped together ourselves, and a simple skate ramp and things like that, right? But it's still, that's enough. That's all it takes, You don't have to. I wasn't trying to win any design awards, But with this, I'm just trying to react very fast and effectively to the immediate needs of the people of the neighborhood and the city. And, so it ain't the prettiest design, I don't know if Arc Daily is going to cover this. Oh my God. But it doesn't matter because the people are using it right now.
It's a perfect example of a bottom-up urbanism. You mentioned it was just a temporary project. Is there any way you could make this permanent, or what plan do you have for it to be permanent, at least the impact?
What I know from all over the world, not just me, but all my colleagues who do similar projects, it's a hard sell because the city hall is like, oh God, here they come, these activists and urbanists. So you always sell it as, hey, temporary, man. It's gone in a month or a weekend or however long your project is, right? Mine is a year, which is quite long. September next year, I promised the mayor of Kyiv that we would uninstall it. And I'm going to be true to my word, of course. What's going to happen is that when I announce like next July or something saying, yo, everybody, it's been a great trip. Thanks so much. I got to uninstall it now. And the idea is that everything on this square I've designed for deconstruction or disassembly. So everything can be reused, and maybe sections of the scaffolding structure, they can go off to another city. So some urbanists can try a smaller scale version of what we did. The benches can go somewhere else. All the trees in huge pots, they're like 10 years old, these trees, they're going to be planted in the neighborhood. But when I say, yo, we're taking it down because I made a promise, then the people are going to go, no, we want this. Like, you can't take it away. That's where it's not my project anymore at all because it's, largely finished. It's already their project, but that's really when it becomes their project. I don't know if the city's aware of what's coming, but there's going to be a whole bunch of very opinionated citizens who will demand something to continue on that spot. I've designed it to be temporary. I haven't used the perfect, granite benches. It's all made out of wood. It's all super easy to assemble and disassemble. All the plants and trees can be moved quickly. We can uninstall it in a weekend if we needed to. This is also the design challenge. It has to be very temporary. But the people are going to have a different, they're going to have something to say about this next year. And I hope that just generates some sort of interest in somebody else to say, okay, we got to do something, right? There was a design competition on this location. Some architects won it back in 2017. And then nothing happened. They never had the money, the city, to do this. So I'm filling a gap, and something permanent has to happen. Like that square deserves dignity because of its historical importance for the history of that city and that nation. The people in the neighborhood should have the dignity of a good public space on their most primary location, right? So everybody knows it. Everybody knows that, nothing happened here for years, typical in Ukraine, whatever, blah, 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 complaining about it. But now they've seen it, right? They've seen the other side, right? And they see what's possible to activate a public space with temporary solutions. So, there's one of the better kinds of shitstorms coming next year when the people demand something more permanent on this location. So I don't know what's going to happen. Literally not my job. Up to the people now.
It's exciting. It's kind of a proof of concept. Let's talk about another project you did, the Nordic Therapy Garden. You mentioned it before very shortly. What makes it different from any other park, and what effect did it have on the people?
This was the first large project that I did after importing bikes, which I still do also. But looking at the scale of the mental health issues in Ukraine, I started a deep dive into that. I met some German woman who was working in Ukraine, and when she was filling me in, and I realized, oh my God, this is horrible. This is like insane, the levels of mental trauma and PTSD. I knew about some research, some science out of Denmark 10, 15 years ago called evidence-based health design in landscape architecture. Long and awkward academic phrase, but I started looking into that. I knew about it. And every Danish town and city has therapy gardens, a sensory garden. Many cities around the world have therapeutic gardens. That's like a great thing to have. The Romans even talked about it 2,000 years ago, the therapeutic effect of having a garden. But then I knew about this massive pilot project north of Copenhagen where they started figuring out how to have a deeper understanding of how nature works. It's well documented scientifically that engaging in nature, sitting on, in the forest, the Japanese call it forest bathing. It's pretty, humans have known this for a very long time, that it takes the edge off of whatever stress you might have. It's a really great thing. Many hospitals around the world have a sensory kind of garden for people to hang out in. But the difference with this research was that they just added this layer on the top. And with certain design interventions and a greater understanding of how nature works, we can design a trauma-informed therapy garden, something that can actually heal mental trauma and PTSD, like next level, not just taking off your stress, right? So I deep dived into all of that research. I stand on the shoulders of the researchers here in Denmark and Sweden who figured all this out. But then I said, I'm going to make one of those. So that's what I did. I found 5,000 square meters of forest on public land with public access, but right next to Ukraine's largest psychiatric hospital. Great location, 1,100 people who could certainly use it, especially the wards with veterans suffering from PTSD. And that's a massive growing number as well as regular people. It's not just soldiers. It's everybody, man, who's at risk. So yeah, we together with volunteers, we just started that. I had no money. This was last year. And I was looking for sponsorship. I had like 5,000 euros. I wasn't getting, any more sponsorship. I'm waiting. And then I think it was March or April last year. And I realized I have a garden and it's springtime. Like those things kind of work well together. It's kind of the time for that. And then I said, I can't wait anymore. So I put out a call on my Instagram, hoping to get like 50 people to come and help. I don't know. 500 people showed up on that first weekend. Just
wow.
Like coming from every angle into this forested space from all the different pathways. It just emerged, 500 people. And we started clearing this land, removing garbage, preparing for design and implementation. And we just worked every weekend for 4 months, building the structures that we needed, and finally opened it last year. So it's a facility to heal mental trauma and PTSD. We had to train some skeptical doctors at the hospital. They're in a whole different world compared to us here in Europe, even in the US, about mental health. But we got them on board, and they started using it with their patients. So being able to, we've designed it for 3 levels of mental trauma: in very, very severely affected people, the people sort of in the middle who can maybe talk a bit with people, and then the ones who are getting better and they like to sit in a circle around a fire and discuss, right? So we have these 3 levels. It's a functioning facility, but it really is also just a showcase, for Ukraine, saying, hey, here it is. This is what it is and what it does. Please copy paste this everywhere, because you're going to need so many of these as you move forward. And these mental health issues, if the war ends tomorrow, they don't go away. It's generational. It's like, I don't know how many generations are going to have to deal with this brutal experience of, being invaded and Russia trying to kill you every day, so incredibly important. Simple solution. If you think about it, wooden structures in a forest, some, easy design interventions, but the importance of it, the effect of it is massive. So I keep telling people, like, I went to Ukraine to help using my expertise and skills from working in 100 cities around the world for 20 years, blah, blah, blah. I learned so much. Like the knowledge that I have in my head that I didn't have before, because I've had to throw myself into evidence-based health design and landscape architecture, trauma sensitive design. Oh my God. It's amazing. I'm a volunteer. I don't make any money, but that's my paycheck, man. This added, this explosion of knowledge that I now retain. Hopefully I retain in my brain. You know what I mean? It's really great. So yeah, important intervention, and as a way of showing that there are solutions beyond medication for treating mental health, right? Which is really their baseline over there.
It's beautiful. It must be so impressive if you see how your mission can fill not a room, but a garden with 500 people. Did you do anything to make sure, help to keep them safe during the construction?
So that's their responsibility, right? It's my responsibility. Like, we're in a forest. There's no shelters. The Ukrainians don't go to shelters. You can't go running to a shelter every single day for 3.5 years. So there are still some people who go to shelters. This year's intense. The Russians are throwing like 800 drones a night at Kyiv. So it's a little bit more intense this year than it has been before. But yeah, it's up to the individuals. If you go to some events with embassies, they inform you at the beginning of the event where the shelter is. And then an air raid goes off and you just get another glass of wine, basically. You don't spend your time cowering anymore at all, believe me. So yeah, if you're out in the forest, people can make their own decisions. And some people, I know, they're a little bit more risk averse. So there are people who will go and, find somewhere where they feel more safe. But no, and when they're standing on the middle of Kontraktova Square, 11,000 square meters of asphalt, no shelters, air raid sirens, like I said, echoing off all the surrounding buildings. Yeah, it's up to some people would maybe disappear and then they'd come back, But generally, it's up to people themselves. I couldn't build a shelter, for them. So we figure it out. We all have our own limits and our own ways of dealing with air raids in Ukraine. So we all respect the fact that people are different. We don't, make fun of somebody. You're going to a shelter? Oh my God! Haha. No, of course, everybody's different, right? So yeah, but it's up to the individuals, to take care of whatever need they have for safety.
Do you have any other projects you're working on currently that are not in the Ukraine where you're already applying your new learnings?
No. Like 3.5 years. This last trip to Ukraine, I was there for 21 months, uninterrupted. Only in Ukraine, mostly in Kyiv. All these projects I'm discussing, as well as a couple of others, they occupied my time. And I couldn't risk leaving and maybe having to wait 90 days for the visa to come back in, right? So now I'm out for like the last month, and oh my God, I've never missed my home city of Copenhagen as much as I did, man. I just was speaking at an architecture festival in Torino. I just got home yesterday. It's just so great. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing now. There's so much potential for other projects in Ukraine. You can do stuff there that you can't do anywhere else. Like nobody in their right mind would ever have hired me to do a trauma-informed therapy garden. I'm, the academic kind of hierarchy. Oh, he's not a landscape architect. We better get one of those. But there you can go, fuck it, I can do that. I learned how to do it. Boom, go. You can do anything you want. And it has an immediate effect, because the people need it now. So you don't sit and worry about the academics whining about whether or not you're technically qualified to do stuff. You just do it, right? And that's the difference. I just do stuff. I don't sit and I ask for permission later. You know what I mean? But so no, I haven't had anything on the go outside of Ukraine just yet. I have lots of ideas in Ukraine, but everything that I have learned, I was writing some articles. And my publisher in New York, they have like a short form program. So you write an article and they try to position it in different media. So I was writing some articles for Planetizen about the Ukrainian experience. And the guy there in New York, he said, "Oh, Michael, there's a book in this." And I'm going, "Oh, shut up. Oh, man." And then I'm going, there is totally a book in this. So that's what I'm doing now. I got a new book deal. I'm working on this. It'll be out probably Christmas next year, right? But yeah, welcome to Analogville. I studied in great detail how cities all over the world responded to the pandemic, fascinated by how we dealt with that in the urban space, right? And what did we see? Temporary bike lanes and sidewalks so we could social distance and transport ourselves not in the metro or buses. Pop-up urban spaces, cafes taking away some parking, putting out some tables so we could still insist on living an urban life, as though the cities were these pillars of calm in this chaotic time during the pandemic. We just insisted on living urban lives. So what did I study all that? Now I'm studying, of course, for 3.5 years, how Ukrainian cities and people are dealing with a war and an invasion and constant threat of death. And I'm taking these observations and I'm saying, right, how can we use them with everything that's coming for us regarding the climate crisis or the climate collapse? I don't know why we still say crisis. It's going to be a climate collapse, right? And what can we do to mitigate that in our cities? The basic gist of it all is it's simple. Simple analog solutions are the only things that get us through times of war, crisis, and disaster. Bicycles for 130 years. I've researched it. I've written about it. If you got, in Japanese cities after the war or in German cities after the Second World War, you found a bike, you were golden. That could transport things and you. And you see it in the States with wildfires and hurricanes. You always see in the news photos people who have a bike and a backpack because that's literally a valuable tool in times of crisis, right? But yeah, the catalog of ideas. How do Ukrainian cities get through this? Like when the Russians attack the energy infrastructure, You're going to need a diesel generator, solar panels. You're going to need a normal bike. You're going to have to grow your own food. You have to learn how to do that real quick. Food security is incredibly important as well. It's simple analog solutions. Trams in some cities in Ukraine, they're converted to carry water. In a flash, they have huge water containers, and people come running out under the threat of shelling, fill up their jugs because they have no water in the city, and then go back. It's really, really creative how Ukrainians are tackling it, but it's also just basic, simple analog solutions. Good luck with your smart city bullshit when the grid goes down and you're trying to buy water with your cryptocurrency when your phone's not charged. So yeah, like this is the future we face. The future is analog. We're going back to the future using solutions that worked for thousands of years. We're going to adapt them. There won't be any air conditioning. We got to start thinking differently, right? I'm not a prepper, but I sound like a prepper sometimes. Like, oh yeah, we're never going to survive unless we do these things. But really, in our cities, we have to start thinking like this. So I'm going to get writing this book and get that out of my head, and then I'll start working on some other projects. I got some stuff in Ukraine, more community gardens, things like that. But nothing outside. The book is occupying my brain at the moment.
I'm looking forward to reading that. I really feel like you have such an ambitious energy, yet very grounded ideas. It's so nice to see. Mikael, I have one last question for you. Can you share with me one sustainable project or structure from around the world that you really love?
Like, there's so many great things. Like with my TV series, 4 seasons, 23 episodes, basically meeting people like me who are trying to change things because the city hasn't bothered, right? Regular citizens standing up saying, I can't wait anymore for these people. Let's just go out and plant the trees we need in our neighborhood. Let's make a play street for kids. So it's just been, filming 4 seasons of that has been so inspiring. It's like, I can't identify one or the other. I think what I find the most fascinating, and it's urbanism, it's design. When I was in Tokyo, and I went to this park, and this guy showing me around. It is the muster point for when an earthquake or a tsunami hits. So every small neighborhood, we're not in the Tokyo you see on Instagram, but we're out in the neighborhood. So everybody, they drill and they practice. They said, right, let's meet there when the earthquake comes. And they say when, because it's overdue, right? It could be now. It could be in 20 years, but it's coming. So they're so prepared, so Japanese. It's great. But then in beautiful park, cherry blossoms and everything, and then benches. But everything in that park converts to something else. So the benches, when the earthquake strikes and everybody assembles there, they become barbecues, right? So you can make hot food. They're literally designed to go click, 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 and then there's a barbecue hidden underneath. There are holes with metal like manholes all along one side of the park. There's a building next to this park where all this stuff is in an earthquake building ready for implementation. And then in a flash, there will be toilets, right? Like outhouses, temporary toilets. The infrastructure for the sewage is already in place. Like, it's insane. All the jungle gyms in the playground area are designed to be wrapped in a flash and become medical tents. They are so ready for this. So when I'm not just working in a war zone, but just generally in whatever we're facing in the future, thinking about this dual design, something beautiful. Let's sit on the bench and look at the cherry blossoms. And then in a flash, we're going to need it to be able to make hot food, right? I am just so fascinated by that way of thinking about dual design. I think about it all the time. Like, one of the other things I did in Ukraine, because the mayor of the city of Mykolaiv asked me, I designed the whole cycling strategy. He said, I want to be the Copenhagen of Ukraine. And I said, oh, fine, I'll do that pro bono. And we finished this whole network of infrastructure. And then a colleague of mine, Ukrainian, who knows about this stuff, he said, that's cool, man, but what about evacuation routes? Like, if the Russians come back? And I'm going, oh my God, of course. And I've seen, like, in some cities, I think it's in Portland, they do earthquake drills, like the bike community with cargo bikes. If the earthquake or tsunami hits or whatever, they're prepared in the same kind of way, not with the infrastructure like the Japanese, but with using bikes as a solution for helping people. And so, then I designed evacuation routes. So if the Russians do come back, people can get out. of the city on bikes. And this happened at the beginning of the full invasion. People were grabbing bikes because the Russians were invading, and they just rode out of town and got to safety. That's a kind of a dual design example. But I'm so fascinated thinking about what else we can do. We do it in Copenhagen. We are really one of the world's great sponge cities now because of the climate crisis. We get torrential rain that we've never had before. So we have beautiful public space. And if it rains, all the streets in the neighborhood have been tilted so that all the water goes into this park. And then it becomes a reservoir until the water subsides. So we're redesigning the whole city, not redesigning it, but like just shifting it a bit. That's another good example of dual design. So yeah, sorry, that was a long answer, but I just love that. And one thing becomes another when you need it. And if you don't need it, it's just a beautiful thing while you're waiting,
Like analog smart cities.
Yeah, I just say dumb cities. Like cities were dumb for 7,000 years, and man, they worked. I get asked to speak at smart city conferences around the world. I don't know why they bother with me, because I'm the guy saying, waste of time. I've asked people for years, hey, what's a smart city? Like, what's the definition? Nobody has an answer. Everybody just babbles, in all sorts of different directions. So it's a glossy little marketing phrase, which means absolutely nothing. And when you live in Ukraine and, the most important thing is, charging your phone, of course, and having electricity, to run your fridge and things like that. You just realize it doesn't matter. I don't know, blockchain technology in a war zone, it doesn't really make it, there's no impact. So it's how you survive on a daily basis, right? So give me the good old dumb cities of the past 7,000 years, and then I think we're good to go.
Yeah, looking forward what else to see what else you're gonna build, Mikael. This has been super cool, this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to follow your work, where can they find you?
Oh man, it's mostly Instagram at the moment. There's a YouTube channel as well called The Life Size City. That's where all the TV series episodes are, but there's lots of other stuff out there as well. At the moment, I'm more active on Instagram. I have my own, and then I have my analog urbanism Instagram. So one of those two is probably the best starting point anyway. Yeah.
Perfect. I will link those in the description of the episode. Thank you so much, Mikael.
Thanks, Ladina.
A huge thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to the podcast to support me and so you don't miss an episode. And while you're there, I'd also be so grateful if you could rate and review us. If you have any guest suggestions or any feedback, you can find me on the socials at Ladina Schöpf. Thanks.